Welcome to this special episode with a guest. In this episode, we will discuss recession. But this time, we will discuss recession as an opportunity for fast change for the better. I'm really excited to present one of the German's finest entrepreneur, Mr. Stephan Wagner. I met Stephan just recently online while exploring the depth of digital online presence. And you can imagine that almost every pitch looks the same online right now. However, Stephan was different. That is why we agree on a meeting. And just a couple of minutes in the meeting, it clicked. It was like talking to an old friend that I haven't seen for a long time. Stephan, welcome to Ask Faleskini podcast. I'm really excited to have you here as my first podcast guest. Please tell us a bit about yourself, your businesses, and your side hustles.
Well, first of all, Peter, thanks a lot for having me on your podcast. It's an honor to take part, and I did enjoy to get to know you a lot. As you mentioned already, while getting to know each other, we did realize that we had several comparable experiences in our past. That made our conversation more like being kind of old friends meeting again after a few decades. A little about me. I was born and raised in southern Germany, the Schwaben area, basically as the son of a traditional machine builder. This way, I was able to learn quite early that nothing comes without any price. And well, that you cannot go left and right at the same time. Knowing that, it was a subconscious decision for me to start selling merchandise of the local church against commission quite before I was 10 years old. And this commission-based stuff kept me in its claws ever since. So I started to build up sales departments, complete subsidiaries and companies just because I loved the process of growing and learning a lot before I was even 25 years old. So over the decades, I started up several companies, either with partners or for investors or as a shareholder or paid manager. And to be honest, not all of them were super successful. I had my fair share of falls, went broke and homeless in 95 after trying an MLM system just for 3 days, but I really didn't like it. Got back on my feet, building up and growing again until 2010 when I had a stage 10 burnout while I was building up a machine building company. So 2012 was my personal restart, and after 3 years in a new area of business, I accepted the next task, kind of crazy like I am, building up a gas detection company in a completely saturated market. Interestingly, that went nice, creating profit from 2019 with a seven-figure revenue. So in 2020, I sold my shares and basically resigned from all CEO positions to lay back a little and just relax life for a while.
Very nice. Thank you for this introduction. I would like to ask you, do you think you mentioned commission-based and that you started from an early stage working on commission? Do you think that charging commission instead of, let's say, hourly rate is more recession-proof than hourly rate? So commission, do you think that commission is more recession-proof than hourly rate charge?
I think that highly depends on the personal psychological structure one has. At the end of the day, commission-based is not selling hours for money. Whenever you sell your life hours for money, you're basically on the bad end of the bargain. If you have an ability, if you can do something, you can get paid by the result and not by the time you put in. So a commission-based business in an area of business you are really good at is the best thing that can happen to you.
Yes, I agree. I agree. So basically, commission-based business, if you're good, is recession-proof, let's say, or at least less affected by a recession. In your presentation, you also mentioned that 2010 you had a stage 10 burnout. Would you connect that with the recession of 2008? Is that possible? Because the economic environment was so much more demanding than before that. Would you say that this burnout was a consequence of a recession, or that you had to put in more work for the same result?
I could say that, but it would be a blunt excuse for not taking care of what I should have taken care at the first place. So no, the burnout was not the result of the recession. And even while we've been in the middle of the recession, I was still able to sign up bigger customers like Miele, You know, Miele,
Yes.
like some others in that area. The problem was, of course, the bad economy forced me to do things a bit differently. But the reason for the burnout wasn't the economy. It was basically that I was trying to do everything at the same and everything by myself and for a much too long time. So I was not taking care for myself. That's the whole reason behind it.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I'm gonna push everything towards recession today because this podcast is about recession or how to solve recession. So if I understand correctly, if you do things the right way, you are much easier to go through recession because you have your things or your life settled in a way that is more sustainable. So it depends less on an outside factors and it depends more on you. Is that correct? Would that assumption be something that
You can put this assumption out, but then you definitely have to add what is the right kind of behavior. Because of course, recessions will influence our whole life. There is no way around it. If suddenly things are priced multiple times than they were priced before, if suddenly there's a shortage in open positions on the job market, of course that influences us. But the point is, we can see a recession as a big problem, or we can see a recession as a chance to work on ourselves and to basically take care for ourselves in a way that we are mentally free to find chances that are given. And there are always chances.
very well, very optimistic. So would you say that you, because of your previous experiences, would you say that you could anticipate the last recession in 2008?
I don't really get the question.
Would you say that because of your experiences in the business and because you were all in the business, could you see the last recession of 2008 coming beforehand? Or
Oh, that was not too difficult to see because the reason for the last time was basically what we did worldwide in the Western world with our financing of housings. And at the end of the day, that was a bubble that was created greedily, and sooner or later someone had to pay the price, and we all paid it. The question only was, when will it happen?
Mhm. How did you see these patterns? What was emphasized in your perception of the situation? Did you use any special methods, or how did you, when you see the house bubble, how did you, what led you to believe that there's no endless growth? Was that experience? Was that intuition? How did you
Well,
how did you recognize the pattern? What was?
an endless growth is a myth anyway. There is
Mhm.
no way to create an endless growth. That's not working. Although people are being told like that, but it's just not the truth. But fact is, I did not really see it. I did not really see single points. It was more like a gut feeling, like something is weird. And I've learned to trust my stomach over the decades. So I basically stopped all plannings to reevaluate the sense of doing what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Based on that, being sensitive to patterns and pitfalls on the market, how far can your site help to understand something's got to change? That's the question one asks himself then. At the end of the day, you know, forcing oneself to think and to believe its own perception is something we are not really being taught in school. We are being taught to follow the rules, we are being taught to learn, we're being taught to get degrees. But the end of the day is that it's always a mixture between knowledge, experience, and gut feeling. Gut feeling is being produced by experience, positive and negative ones, doesn't really matter. That also means strategic planning in a moment where things are really going south is always a huge risk because you cannot depend on your own plannings. It's just how it is. But the point is, my side of level in strategy was already proven a few times over decades. So my gut feeling told me something is really odd. Even in the moment when I was realizing I'm going south with my health, still things were odd in business. When it finally happened, that with the Lehman Brothers, the 2008, 2009 recession happens, it was a real big cry out all over in business. But at the end of the day, the circumstances changed. Change doesn't mean it's getting worse. Change just means that we need to adapt. And that's what I was doing before I basically fell into my burnout. So I was completely working a year in this recession, and we still had good revenue. We still had a lot of work. It was just to create results with a much lower amount of cash upfront or with a much lower creditability. That's just the difference.
Okay. So did I understand that correctly? For a recession, gut feeling is much more important than the outside data, what the world is telling. So it's more important to listen to yourself than to narrative in the economy at that time.
You shouldn't be completely blind, of course not, but you also should not be blind against your own feelings. So people are trying to tell us and are trying to teach us that statistics and numbers are always the main reason for decisions. And that's just not the case. It's just not the case. It's the case if you have zero experience because you need to start somewhere. Of course, you need to start somewhere. You need an indicator. You need, let's say, a direction where you can be pointed to. But as soon as you achieve a certain level of experience, as soon as you failed a few times too, as soon as you've been forced to stand up again and build yourself up or your business up again, you create experiences that are extremely valuable and that will help to set these numbers in a completely different perspective. And you suddenly become able to judge these numbers, to interpret these numbers on very different ways. And you stop just believe the bullshit you get served every day. You start to think by yourself. And in the moment where you start to think about strategies, even strategies inside of a recession, it's more a question about how do you address this situation? If you accept recession as a problem, if you take recession as a downfall of civilization, as you know, as something like that, it's incredibly difficult to find ways, positive ways to grow in a recession. As soon as you define your situation in your recession as clearly as possible, and you name for yourself the single points that might make you afraid, that might hold you back from investments or whatever, as soon as you're able to really describe your actual situation as clear as possible, you already have a description of a this is now situation, and you suddenly don't see it as a problem that cannot be fixed. If you have a situation clearly described, and we know this both, it's a description of a situation. You want to change the situation, change the parameters, change the attributes, change the single things that you can change, and accept those points that you cannot change. But there are always enough points that you can change to basically direct your personal life, your personal business into a still positive growing situation. And yes, you might have to accept that probably click rates will become lower if you're in e-business, that probably your ads won't, shoot back with the same quality. You need to accept that you probably need to do a little bit more for the same result. But the main thing is you have to accept that you might need to think differently to get to the same result, that you might need to address people differently, that you might need to change your business model a little bit. So we have a very old saying here in Germany, if you always do the same like you did before, you will never achieve anything different that you had before. So if things are changing, if times are changing, and you don't change with it, you will be the last one in the line. If you realize the times are changing, be awake, be aware, check your perception, and change with the times. And if you do that, you'll sooner or later realize change can be pretty fun. It's always concluded with learning. It's always included with doing new things. If you don't like doing new things, man, go and find your job, be an employee. That's okay. We cannot all be entrepreneurs, and that's fully okay. But if you're an entrepreneur, if you want to take your life in your own hands, and if then you face a recession, a decline in business, a decline of customers, whatever you name it, describe your position honestly to yourself, as detailed as you can. Go to sleep or whatever, get a bottle of wine or a steak or whatever you need to switch off your brain. Go back to your description a day later. Go on this description as if a friend is asking you for help. Go through your own description and you will usually find yourself in a position that most of the needed solutions can be deducted from your own description. It's just a process that is not really taught in school, but it works.
Yeah, I'm a huge admirer of this concept. However, I'm still in the early phase of recognizing myself. I'm a huge fan of Art of War, and then the Sun Tzu said, "Know yourself, know your enemy. 100 battles, 100 victories."
I really asked myself what Sun Tzu would do with all the snowflakes we have nowadays.
That would be a huge challenge. I have you basically explained how on the micro level, on operational level in company, and on your personal level, how you handle the outside changes and the recession that is coming. But I cannot go outside of the energy crisis in Germany and of course in Europe. Is there some outline how you would go about this crisis? Because everyone is talking about the crisis. However, a lot of German households and even small companies are almost self-sustainable because they have so much solar power and wind cells and cogeneration. How would you go? Just a short outline. I know it's a topic for a whole podcast or even a whole podcast series. But how do you think this energy crisis or recession in energy sources can be handled?
Well, this is definitely a very good and important question, just to make that absolutely clear. But it has a lot of different layers. If we take away all the geopolitical strategies that are behind it and that are basically causing these shortages, we are still facing mentalities and propaganda. And in Germany, we also face a government that we have selected, that we have elected, that basically was not joking when they told us they want to be like zero emission. We were all hoping that when they are in power, they start to calculate. Well, they went into power and somehow the thing with the calculations, that just didn't work. So we are not only facing the shortages that are nearly globally, we also we also carry the shortages that were made in our own house. So it's not really fair to compare that to the rest of the world, because right now we Germans show the world how stupid we can be. It's just, it's all I can say to that.
Okay. I will not push any further. However, I think that the engineering and ingenuity or all genius, how to say, discoveries and patents and everything you have, I'm sure you have solution for that also. I also agree with you when you said that it's a social problem or socioeconomic problem. And I also agree, maybe you put it more mildly, but it looks like that current governments all over Europe, because let's be honest, German is a role model for most of the European countries. The government have found a solution for zero emission. They will just close the whole industry now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we are already in this process, and they still
the
don't understand what's happening.
The mathematics of emission work. They don't see the social impact, the economic impact and everything. They just calculate. The whole system is now being attuned to emissions instead of taking care more factors. That's at least my I say point of view right now.
Well, when I have conversations with friends outside of Germany, especially outside of Europe, they usually ask me two simple questions. The first one is, are you sure they're able to calculate? I usually say no, because they've
Okay.
proven over and over again. And the second question is, why are 80% of your guys not yet on the streets? Because effectively, it's just not possible to uphold a state like Germany with renewable energies, not even for the base needs of electricity.
Mhm.
So without any fossil fuels or without nuclear power, there is no way how you can keep a country like Germany awake. And I'm not talking about being able to produce. I'm just talking about being awake. So
Mhm.
already today, we don't have light on the streets in the night. We've switched
Okay.
it off to save electricity. And the point is, this will by far not be the last thing, because the renewable energy will not be able to cover more than less than 10% of our needs. And that only in times where either the sun is shining or the wind is blowing. So we are basically removing ourselves from the map of power in the world.
Yeah, I'm as I see, I think that the same or similar problem is all over Europe. And I don't understand, because Germany used to be nuclear superpower as far as nuclear energy or electric energy is producing. And somehow the Green Party decided that it would be wise to move out of that. Even if I consider nuclear power still one of the high-tech, let's say, fields. And I don't see direct consequences or direct negative effects on the environment beyond the storage of highly radioactive waste.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'm sure, because of all the knowledge you have and all the experience, I'm certain that you can make a turnaround, at least in the nuclear phase or a nuclear power plant. Let's move to another topic. And I see you're being visionary because you're also involved with the food industry. And food industry is something that might be one of the biggest gainers of the forthcoming recession.
The problem is that food industry might become a winner after the market is cleared out. And the market is already clearing out. So one of the bigger bakeries in my area where I live had to shut down its business a few days ago, with over 70 places where you could go and buy bread. So we will really see what's happening there, because production of food usually takes up a lot of energy. It's like stupid things, toilet paper, for example, kitchen paper too. The paper industry and the soft paper industry uses a lot of gas. If there is no gas, you have a shortage in energy to produce that, which basically led to the company Hakle. Hakle is one of the biggest manufacturers for toilet papers and things like that. Went in, how do you call this, friendly? In some kind of bankruptcy, and the salaries are actually paid by the state for the next 3 months, and we'll see if the company will survive or not.
Okay, so it's not chapter, it's probably chapter 7, not chapter 11. So it's a bit of financial reorganization or restructuring.
And food itself became expensive like hell. So people who were used to buy at something like Rewe or Edeka before, which are high-end discounters, not really discounters, it's a full sortiment supermarket where you can basically find high-end quality food. These people are now usually shopping at Netto or Penny, which is low-cost discounter. And many people who were shopping at Penny before, you know, the standard working class, they are sometimes now depending on food welfare. So it's not really great for the food industry.
Okay, but can you tell us a bit about your food project?
Cologne Foodie. Yeah, Cologne Foodie. Well, Cologne Foodie is part of a strategy to support and educate people, but also to entertain people. The reason for Cologne Foodie is, in my personal In my personal likes, I love to cook, I love to eat since decades, but I never made a business out of it because as soon as I would do it for business, I don't have fun with it anymore. So over the years, there was an idea to create something where we basically live the quote, never eat alone on a daily basis. That's what we are doing in my agency anyway. So we cook fresh food every day. And this year we decided to build up a show kitchen and we stream the cooking and the eating live with an interactive audience. And we are also generating, small movies, how to cook something or that. But the main reason at the end of the day is that we have a format where we entertain people at the same time, educate people, and also have a high level of interaction. That means we also have guests in the show answering questions with their expertise. We help people to show their expertise. And on the other hand, we deliver value right away because our topics are spread very wide, from business strategies to personal development, ending with special expertises from our guests, like, being a dentist or something like that, or being a surgeon for plastic surgery or something like that. That means we try to entertain, but at the same time try to educate a little bit. We are fully interactive. That means on several platforms, people can ask questions while the thing is ongoing. And at the end of the live show, we basically cut a YouTube and a podcast out of the material so people can even go back to it. But also Cologne Foodie has the mission to educate and to support a little bit. That means what we do there and what we try to bring in knowledge, we also do on different other channels. So for example, I have a German-speaking TikTok channel where I support people with help and explanations and proven techniques to either improve self-esteem, self-value, self-confidence, all of these things, where I talk about the art of perception and communication, and especially about perception, belief systems, and how to change them. Because this, in my point of view, will help in the future upcoming years, nearly everyone. We all will face situations that we not really want to have. And we all will face situations where we might, become desperate, or we might think there is no solutions or something, but there is always a solution. But it's not always easy to access the information how to get there. And just to make sure that it's really being spread, the same content is used for additional channels. So I will also start an English-speaking channel in a week or something like that. There will be a third channel with the same kind of content done in Nigeria. There will be a fourth channel in Ghana. Both channels are somehow connected with the Bafemi Foundation. It's my NGO foundation that I built there. So we try to support people free of charge with understanding, with knowledge, with methods, with techniques to take care for themselves. And we do that basically in 4 different languages. So it's basically a project where I try to give something back and try to support especially younger people, because, us old folks, we have some experiences, and we know from experiences, most of us, that even if life kicks us in the face and we find ourselves eating dirt, it's our own decision to get back on our feet. And it's not easy, but we can do it. But if you're like 20, 22, 25, close to 30, and you might listen to, Top G a lot without without a lot of real knowledge and background, you'll face situations where you'll be happy to understand more about yourself.
Okay, maybe just for our US audience, it's important to understand that Germany is famous for their television shows, and because they're not broadcasted in US, but they have a whole lot of really quality shows, like yourself. You have one of the best shows, and I would like to know, are the recipes that you use only German, or do you, because I know you're the man of the world, do you use other recipes just for this? I think it's now called fusion cuisine and similar. How do you go about it? How do you choose the recipes for the show?
I have to admit, I do like German traditional food a lot. But over the decades, it's getting really boring to have only German traditional food.
Mhm.
So we vary a lot. We have a lot of German traditional food. Yes, we do. We also have a lot of Asian food, like Chinese soups, like Thai curries, like Indian stuff. We will also have a complete series where we present African food from East and West Africa. East Africa, my kids are made with a lady from East Africa, so I have a very deep insight in that area.
Mhm.
The Wafeme is in Ghana, which is West Africa. That other channel is Nigeria. So I do have some deeper connection to that area of the world. Same goes with Asia. I loved China when I was the first time in China, and I was so sneaky in the kitchens that they were really asking themselves, what is this long nose doing there? But I was trying to inhale all the different ideas of how to make a great soup. Um, Food from the Middle East, like Syria, like Persia, like Iran, like Iraq, is something I also like a lot. It's not very spicy. It's a lot with lamb, a lot with rice. So yes, we will cook a very huge amount of different food styles over the time.
Okay. Um, Maybe just this is a trick question. Just would you say which cuisine is the most recession-proof or the simplest to make, and the ingredients are, let's say, readily available, the good price, but they are also, because I know that you're also expert on nutrition, and that you also did a lot of sport in the past, so you're really good in this area. So which would you say, just a guess, what would be the most recession-proof cuisine that someone can opt for, so that get the best calories, all the best mix of proteins and similar, the best nutritions for the buck?
Well, funny thing is, by the end of the year, we will bring out a series of recipes for exactly that purpose.
Uh-huh.
That means there are several recipes, basically, by the way, originated in Poland and partly in Eastern Europe, and in the colder areas of Germany, that are really, really good for that. So we will show people how basically just to use flour, water, eggs, and potatoes to make a fantastic three-course meal. We will show people what you can do with tomatoes and flour, basic stuff that you can usually mostly afford if available. And we will show people how you can spice up really, really cheap food for a very, very slow amount of coin. So it will really be a little series of 30, 40 different meals. We will take care to do that. If it's really needed at that time, I really don't know. But that's the way I learned it myself too. As I said, I have been lucky enough to be homeless for only 3 days, but it was not like being wealthy immediately afterwards. I had a long way back.
Mhm.
So I had personal times where I basically lived off like $1 a day and
Mhm.
even less. So I know exactly what you can do with not a lot of money. And well, a steak is not on the list.
Okay. We've discussed your connection to Africa, but we haven't discussed your passion for Asia too much. And we touched this topic, but maybe a bit. We can do it again. During the recession of 2008, mainstream media often quoted Asian wisdom as crisis is also an opportunity. What's your attitude towards the crisis as an opportunity? What would you suggest? Like most of listeners of Ask Faleskini is a bit younger than we are, a bit less experienced. And what would you suggest? How should they go about it? You also touched about your mental preparation for to get through tough times. Uh, what would be your suggestion? How to prepare mentally for the crisis? What is the most important?
Well, there are things everyone can do for it. As you can see, I'm just looking for the point where I was writing that stuff down. Give me a second. Okay. When it comes to Asian philosophy, there is one huge difference to our Western philosophy. Our Western philosophy is highly materialistic. The Asian philosophy is based not so much on materialistic, more on mental stuff. That means, first of all, I really fully agree to, let's say, Asian sayings that in every crisis there are opportunities. And as I mentioned before, if you clearly name your crisis, if you describe your situation as detailed as possible, you very often can basically deduct the reason and also the solution out of it. But there are always things young people can do from the beginning when they feel a crisis is coming. And most of these things are directed inside of ourselves. Means in any case, even if there is not really a big problem in the world, it will just amplify the results. If you are not yet self-disciplined, do everything you can to become self-disciplined. There are so many real good sources on the internet how you can do that. And in the worst case, if you really don't have any idea, start making your bed in the morning. It's really something that will carry you through the worst times possible if you own a proper self-discipline. Be awake. Don't sleep. You can sleep at night. Wake up when you are out of your house. Be awake. Watch for opportunities. Look what people are doing and look what people are not seeing. Search for your own perception. And in doing so, stay being kind. You know, your neighbor is not the reason why recession is there. Your spouse is not the reason. And even if you face real problems, it's still not the right time to take that out on your friends, neighbors, or spouses. Take that out by yourself and use that energy to grow and to be honest to yourself. And whenever you feel that this honesty is creating a pain or a pressure on your chest, you're on the right way. Continue thinking in exactly the direction where the pain is, and you will get to learn yourself much better. But at the end of the day, you have to develop a certain self-discipline and you have to develop a certain self-awareness. If you do so, now more than ever, you will find your results, success, and happiness outside of your comfort zone. If you're not disciplined, you will always seek for your comfort zone. Comfort zones in a crisis? That's a good joke. You can create your own one, but only if you're self-disciplined. Don't believe or expect that your old comfort zone will still keep you comfortable. That's not going to happen. Not at all. That means step out of your fucking low life comfort zone. Stop being lazy in your head. Times have changed already. There is no way of going back. That means start to take care for yourself. Be disciplined, not only a way that you force to create results, be disciplined also in a way that you take care for yourself. It's really important. And before next time you see a lady on the job with new fingernails, and you think about it, that one has time to take care of her fingernails, but she's not doing the job. Guess what? She was doing the right thing because she was taking her 15 minutes only for herself. That's the reason why women usually are a little bit more happy than men. So be disciplined. Start to learn. Be awake and be aware of your surroundings. Stay being kind. And based on your ability to be disciplined and to take care for yourself, you will be able to direct your mental and physical health to a point where you can grow in any crisis. But it's always the same. It always starts with ourselves and within ourselves. There is one thing I can promise that won't help you. Don't run behind self-named gods, no matter which age and no matter which car they drive. It's basically a fake, and you will never realize it that it was a fake. So there are many of these gurus on the internet, you know, they tell you all kind of shit. And at the end of the day, you can sign up for something like a Hustlers University or bullshit, and you won't get a real value out of it because the system is designed exactly like everyone else. The initiator will make money, not you as a supplier of money. Means grow up, be disciplined, take care for yourself, be awake and be aware, be kind in what you do, but be awake and take care for yourself. And then you'll be able to grow in any crisis.
Great advice. I think that goes beyond recession. That goes also for life and for success. I think this is
It does.
I think this is universal advice. And now I'll go more into business. I want to get as much out of you as possible, because you're the fountain of knowledge. So where do you see opportunity for, let's say, on a global scale as a business? Where do you see the trends are going? And then if you can be more specific, where do you see opportunity for the US and Germany, or Europe as a whole?
Well, the funny thing is, the amount of opportunities has not decreased. It has basically increased. Because whenever there is a shortage, there is a shortage. So when there is a shortage, there's a way to supply something. Okay, right now, supplying wheat to Africa is kind of difficult because the ships are being held somewhere. That's a different thing. But here, it's basically the same. Our outside world is a mirror of our inside world. That means if in our inside world, I feel like I'm not worth of doing business, I won't find an opportunity in the outside world. So what I've said before, even in a recession, it is really, really important, essentially important, that you take care for yourself, and that you bring yourself into a mental state where you are not looking for desperation, but where you are looking for development and chances. If you do that, man, you know, the weirdest thing I have seen within the last 10 days was a new kind of service on Fiverr. You can now sell your service as an active listener on Fiverr. That means you get paid for listening and for being the nice guy. First time in our society, you can get paid for being the nice guy. Okay. Fiverr itself, and there are many other platforms, Fiverr itself allows you to really see what can I do. And, you know, there are even things like you can online read a good night story for kids and get paid for it. There's a Chinese guy who is doing things completely different. This Chinese guy is selling phone calls to children, and he's selling this phone call to the parents. And you know how this phone call works? It's like a shaming phone call. If your kid is not working in school and you think you cannot really get along, you call the guy. This guy will call your kid, and he will give the kid a speech. Believe me, after that speech, the kid will say, "Oh, my daddy is so friendly," and it will start working. It's a business idea, you know? It's not something usual, but the guy was thinking. One of the examples somehow we all heard about is KB Lame. At the beginning of COVID, he was fired from his main job and he was fired from his side job, and the whole family was kind of depressed. So he was starting doing funny TikToks, like, you know, looking at life hacks, making them easier, and all he ever did was. And I remember quite well, after 4 or 5 weeks, he had exactly 7 views. 7 views.
Mhm.
It was not to be predicted that it will be a guy with 150 million followers on TikTok after 2 years. Today, KB, the last TikTok I've seen was him and Puff Daddy, you know. That's a complete different class. There are so many opportunities right now out in the market. If you can do something, become aware of what you can do. It's not like in the 90s anymore. When you and me, when we've been in our 20s and we wanted to explore which opportunities we have, we had no one to go.
Mhm.
If we wanted to learn something, the only way we had was to find the city with a good library and find a book that might be 10 years old already. Nowadays, these problems are not here anymore. So if you nowadays want to learn something, it's only the decision of being active or not, because you can find everything. It's the same with finding customers. You know, when I was in my 20s, finding customers meant basically hello, this is Stephan. I've heard you, cold calling.
Mhm.
And I did a shitload of cold calls until I was training people to do cold calls. And the test to be a cold caller was making someone on the phone to cut his line. And it worked. You don't need these games today anymore. You have Facebook, you have TikTok, you have Instagram, you have Pinterest, you have these many platforms. And all you need to do is to fucking sit your ass on a chair, learn how it works. You don't need to become a marketing specialist. You don't need to be in the class of Gary Vee. You don't need to be anything like that. And it's not even that you need a lot of training how to edit a video. You just need to make a conscious decision, sit down, think about what can you do and what do you want to do. Do you want to help people? Do you want to sell something? Do you want to create something? Do you want to pass on your knowledge? Probably you're good in a foreign language, so you can teach people talk in a different language. You can use platforms that cost like zero. You know that dancing platform TikTok was introduced from an ex-employee to me, and he came up to me and he told me, look at that shit, it's the dancing app of my daughter. Such a bullshit. And I was looking at it the same way until the middle of last year, until I went deeper into the system to see what could you do. Well, something like training kids in the areas of school where they need help can be done over TikTok super easy, because you have a direct line and a direct side to the teacher who helps you.
Mhm.
So there are so many opportunities, but it's always in ourselves. Means if we limit our beliefs and if we give in to fear, it's like standing in front of a brick wall. You cannot go through. It's not working. So understanding our limits, understanding our beliefs, and understanding that fear is healthy, working with the fear to grow, to make new decisions, to build up something is quite easy. It's just a decision. So, you know, I heard once a friend of mine talking about talent. And some people are, oh, I have a talent for this, and I will one day become, world's best painter or whatever. But there are also abilities. So one of my friends has a talent. He's a guitarist. He plays the guitar like an angel, really, like once or twice a month. But he has an ability, which is patience. He has very, very steady and quiet hands, and he doesn't mind to learn. So his talent was the guitar. But guitar, really making money as a guitar player, come on, that's one of 100,000. But his abilities led him to a situation to become a plastic surgery for noses. He's doing quite well. And the crisis doesn't, it doesn't really matter because, noses are being done anyway. And that's where his abilities are. His talent is now his free time thing. And when I visit him, we usually jam the whole weekend and he plays the guitar and I sit there and drink my beer. And I have like a live concert one-on-one. That's great. But he makes his money with his abilities, not with his talent. So think about what can you do? What are your abilities? Of course, you can go for your talent. Like so much of the black population trying to be best in basketball and trying to come to the NBA, but completely forgetting the numbers. So if you have talent, go for it. That's great. But if you need to make a living, think about what you can do today.
Mhm. So basically, recession is all about discipline yourself, being an open-minded, being optimistic, and then it's just just let's say a lot of work. And if you have good analysis, you can we can lower the percentage of the luck needed to be successful.
Exactly. To a point where you don't need any luck at all.
Mhm.
And
So,
that's exactly, by the way, 2 years later. Yeah. All those people who were not seeing you dancing and spending money because you were doing what your abilities said, 2 years later, suddenly you have success and everyone says it's coming overnight. The truth. That's how it works. That's how it works.
Would you say that recession increases time needed to be successful, or there are, because you mentioned that there are even more opportunities. Is it possible that even fastest grow or even faster break-evens in new businesses and similar are possible in recession? What would you estimate?
Today, I believe it really doesn't matter that much if you're in a recession or not. If you're in a recession, not every business model might bring you fruits quickly. It is how it is. But a recession or not, the human nature doesn't change. That means we all have basic needs. We all sleep, we all eat, we all drink, and a lot of us fuck. So it's basically something, it's already 4 areas.
Mm-hmm.
And only connecting with these 4 areas, you can create 100,000s of businesses. And that's the lowest level of what we all want. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you're really new in about thinking what human wants, get a fucking old book, Google Maslow, check for the Maslow pyramid, and you have at least the first indicator. If you want to be a little bit more modern, because, Maslow was the guy with the dogs and all of these things. And he was Russian, probably was not, if you want to be more actual, more modern, go find yourself the book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. You'll find the same kind of pyramid in different ways described, but it's the same situation. So understand basic needs of humans, and they are the same everywhere in the world. It doesn't matter if you're with native folk in Papua New Guinea, or if you're in the middle of New York. We all have the same basic needs. And then you have the next layers. Then you have the layers of entertainment, of fun, of joy, up to a point where people want to become super conscious or all of these things. But it's not that difficult. You just need to step out of your little own brain and listen and check and understand what's the reality. And if you then are awake, and if you don't lead yourself into a misleading path, so if you're awake and if you're disciplined, you only search for one of the things. Don't do 3 or 4 things at once. Choose for one of these things, go for it continuously. And even if you would open a burger stand and you find a way to make your burger a little bit cheaper or at the same price, but better, you will be successful. It's a standard need of humans. We all eat, we all drink.
Yeah, impressive. I just admire your optimism, and all these experiences supported with theory like Maslow pyramid of needs. I'm a huge fan also, and I also see that your business, because you're in the food industry, so the lowest part, and you're in entertaining a bit higher, and you also know about let's say the spiritual needs and all this stuff. So you have Maslow covered, basically.
I'm doing exactly the same thing like I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the same. So if you, and that's by the way, a side information, if you ever searching for a mentor or for a coach, check if the person was doing it by himself. Check if the person does as he preaches, or if the person tells you to do one thing, but personally is doing something completely different.
So practice what you preach always.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Okay. Is there anything else you think it would be smart or needed to be included in the podcast about recession? Is there anything else that you would like to talk about?
There is only one thing, and I would like to close with that. It's a saying I have heard from an American actor, Tom Hanks. He was in a talk show and he was asked, what sentence, what clever line, what words would he have liked to understand earlier? And he was waiting for a few seconds, probably a theoretical pause, and he only said, this too will pass.
Mhm.
Whatever happens in our life, it will pass. And it doesn't matter if it's a feeling of happiness, because it will pass, or if it's a feeling of desperation, it will pass. A feeling of hate, it will pass. Everything will pass over time. Everything will change over time. So if you find yourself in a situation where you don't see the next day, where you can't see your future in a month, where you are maybe really desperate, maybe you're used to go for a 1K steak every week, and now you suddenly can only afford, the leftover from Walmart. This will pass too. It doesn't really matter. What won't pass is what you achieve in your inner self. Everything else will pass. And Tom Hanks' saying was, this too will pass for everything.
Amazing, amazing. And also applicable to recession, because the recession will pass as well. Stephan, thank you for this amazing contribution. I'm confident it will help a lot to the listeners of Ask Faleskini podcast. They should understand the threats and, more important, opportunities in the recession. And you also mentioned how they can attune their attitude towards recession, and
Yes.
This should also solve a lot of their problems. And you're, of course, also active in social media. You mentioned we met on LinkedIn. You mentioned that you're active on TikTok. You have also YouTube channel. Is there any specific channel that you would like to invite our listeners to? And all the other channels, we'll just list it in a comment below.
I think the three interesting channels is, first of all, Cologne Foodie, because it's a growing system. I think by November or December, we will be grown enough to really be live twice a week in the evening. But it's a mixture between entertainment and edutainment. So it's a very nice thing. The second channel that might help more is the LinkedIn channel We Two Met, because over that channel, I'm available to make contact. I'm also available to, let's say, support with short calls, something like that. And the third channel that might be interesting is the TikTok channel, where I basically explain in short videos the same things we have just discussed in the podcast. So this channel will be started around the end of this week. The name is already clear. It's the same name like in the LinkedIn profile. We are actually pre-producing many TikToks right now, and we are producing them immediately in 4 languages. So with the Nigerian and Ghanaian channel. So starting from, I think it will be the 20th, starting from the 18th or 20th of September, these channels will be filled with content. And of course, if anyone of the audience feels the need to have a direct conversation or direct support, I'm usually free for these, normal 15-minute calls. Very often within 10-15 minutes, there are already impulses that can solve situations. And if there is more needed, I'm basically available.
Thank you very much for this outstanding offer to our listeners, that they can reach you via LinkedIn for a short 15 minutes conversation. I know that I profited a lot from this conversation, and also this podcast is a direct consequence of this conversation. And it's also nice that they have an option to, if I understand correctly, to get in touch with you if they would like more in-depth coaching. And I'm sure that this podcast showed them that you are just a fountain of experiences, and that what is amazing for me is that all the optimism, and you have methods to solve every situation that you get yourself in. So thank you again.
I wasn't born with it, but I learned to stand up afterwards.
That is also really important, that what you already mentioned, that you can learn the discipline that you can learn how to solve problems, and that you can also learn the attitude towards solving problem, and
Yeah.
how basically every recession is just a challenge.